Hi everyone, so good to have you here. In this video, we are talking about Henry Mintzberg's 10 managerial roles, which describe what a manager actually do at work. So Mintzberg concluded that there are 10 different roles in 3 different categories. So where did that come from? Well, in the 1960s and the 1970s, when formal managers became more and more common, questions like, what do managers actually do at work? And why are some managers more effective than other managers? Why do some managers meet their goals and others do not? So a lot of studies were conducted on what managers actually do at work. One of the most famous studies was done by Professor Henry Mintzberg in the early 1970s. What he did is he followed managers around for many weeks, observing their behaviors. And he concluded that to meet all the different demands of performing their jobs, managers take on multiple roles. So each manager can have multiple roles. It's important to note here that a role is one thing that a manager can do. A role has one set of behaviors associated with that role. So that means that each manager can have multiple roles. So for each manager, they can have all 10 of these roles, and they may use these roles more or less, depending on where in the organization they are and what kind of company they are with. So it's important to pay attention to what the role actually is. You might have a role as a parent, as a sibling, as a dog owner, as a student, as a worker. Those are different roles, and you have different expectations in the different roles. That's what we're talking about here. So back to the study. So according to Henry Mintzberg, managers take on these 10 different roles, and they are in 3 different categories. So the 3 different categories that he came up with are informational, interpersonal, and decisional. The informational category, with 3 roles in it, the informational category links all of the managerial work together. They process information and they provide feedback. The interpersonal role ensures that information is provided. So the roles in the interpersonal category ensure that information is provided and they also accept feedback. Finally, the decisional role makes use of the information. So the 4 roles in the decisional category make significant use of information, and they also provide feedback. Informationally, process of information. The first role that you have is that you monitor. That means that you regularly seek out information that is related to your company, your organization, and to your industry. You look out for relevant changes in the environment that sits outside of your organization. You monitor your team, how they're doing, their productivity, and their well-being. As a disseminator, this is where you communicate information to people who need it, such as your colleagues, your team, your boss, whoever needs information. You will also be a spokesperson. Here, managers represent and speak for their organization. You're responsible for transmitting information about your organization and its goals to people outside. That means we are giving information to our stakeholders, the community outside, our customers. So you represent the organization. Now we are in the interpersonal category, and here the managerial roles provide information and ideas. The first role in the interpersonal category is figurehead. As a figurehead, you have social, ceremonial, as well as legal responsibilities. You're also expected to be a source of inspiration. People look up to you. So they look up to you because you have authority given to you by the organizational structure of the organization. You are a leader of that team, that unit, maybe of the entire organization, the entire company. As a leader, you need to provide leadership for everyone, for your team, for your department, and maybe for the entire organization. This is where you take a look at the performance of the units, of the employees, making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do, measuring that performance against set benchmarks, making sure responsibilities are allocated appropriately. As a liaison, you communicate with internal and external contacts. This is sort of where you act as a little bit of a conduit. You are a conduit of information. Information flows through you. You accept information and you pass it along. You also network, so you need to be able to network effectively on behalf of your organization. Make contacts, maintain professional relationships to make sure that all the relevant parties are in your contact book. As an entrepreneur, you create and control change within the organization. This doesn't mean you're an entrepreneur running your own organization. Even as a manager in a very established organization, you need to have an entrepreneurial mind. Sometimes we call that intrapreneur. So it basically means that you're solving problems, you're generating new ideas, implementing new ideas. So you're thinking new and you're changing things. As a disturbance handler, when the organization or the team, they hit a roadblock, something happens, the manager is the one that needs to take charge. You also need to help mediate any conflicts or disputes that happen among your team or your peers. So you take care of all those disturbances. You will be a resource allocator, and you need to determine where the organizational resources that you have, whether they are financial, whether they are people, whether they are buildings, patents, things, where are these organizational resources best applied? So you allocate funding, you assign staff, you assign any applicable resources. Lastly, negotiator. As a negotiator, you need to take part in and direct important negotiations within your team, maybe your department, or even the organization. If you lead the organization, you might even be negotiating with the union on behalf of the organization. On our last slide, we are taking a look at the manager versus the supervisor. So they are at different level within the organizational structure, but both managers and supervisors have decision-making authority. They may also have employees or direct reports, but not necessarily. You might be a manager, a program manager, and you run a program in an organization, but you might not actually have any employees directing to you. So the supervisor will also perform in these 10 managerial roles, but with a different emphasis, maybe not as much, because managers tend to be more strategic in their authority. They set goals and they make sure that the goals are aligned with the strategy of the organization. And so they will be overseeing strategy, goals, and a team typically. Supervisors tend to be responsible for the day-to-day work. If they supervise individuals as opposed to teams. So as an example, the figurehead role might be less significant for a supervisor because they are not that visible externally to the organization, and they don't give speeches, they don't have legal responsibility. but they might be more of a disturbance handler because they are actually dealing with individual employees. So they have to settle those conflicts. They have to make sure that the team gets along well. And of course, since leadership permeates all activities, the leader role is maybe the most important of all the roles out of 10 roles at all levels of management. So if you're going to pick one to work on today for yourself, pick the leader role where you lead people. That is all for today. Have a good day. Be well, take care, and I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.